We've hit the home stretch of the NFL season, and Week 12 is already underway. And right now, Dolphins fans everywhere are asking the same question. Is there still hope? So today, we're breaking down Miami's playoff picture, what their odds look like, what needs to go right this weekend, how the remaining schedule stacks up, and whether this team can fight their way into meaningful football deep into January. Before we dive further into the playoff race, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an NFL update. All right, let's talk AFC playoff chaos. After Thursday Night Football, the Bills improved to 7-4, while Houston sits at 6-5 after a big win at home. Miami is chasing the Jaguars, Chargers, and Bills in the wild card hunt. They're also sitting behind the Texans, Ravens, and Chiefs in the overall AFC standings. The Dolphins aren't eliminated, but they're sitting far down the ladder. And when you look at the current playoff projections, it's rough. The league models give Miami around a 1% chance to get in. The New York Times has them at less than 1%. ESPN also puts them at under 1%. So yeah, on paper, it looks almost impossible. Now look, I'm not here to sell a fantasy. I'm not telling you Miami will make the postseason. In fact, if you're asking me realistically, the odds are barely hanging on by a thread. But there is a path. Thin, narrow, unlikely, but a path. And that's what we're going to explore. After this week's bye, Miami has 6 games left. The first 2 are winnable. The Saints at home. The Jets in New York. If you take care of business, that puts Miami at 5-7. And honestly, 2 weeks to prepare for a struggling Saints team? You should win that game. Then you face a Jets squad that's been one of the league's weakest all season. Even in cold December weather, Miami should be able to handle that. So if everything goes right, the Dolphins could realistically enter the final month at 6-7. And if they're sitting there at 6 wins, still breathing, still fighting, then yeah, maybe, there's a spark of life left. But here's the catch. The road after that gets brutal. A freezing December matchup in Pittsburgh, a primetime showdown against Cincinnati, a visit to Tampa, and then a season-ending battle in New England, where the Patriots could be fighting for top playoff seeding. To make a miracle run, Miami would need to win out 8 straight victories to close the year. 8 straight in the NFL, that's a mountain only a few teams ever climb. Winning 8 straight games in the NFL is almost unthinkable. But if Miami somehow pulled it off, beating Buffalo, Washington, and then running the table through the final 6, they'd finish at 10-7. And according to the New York Times playoff simulator, even after a perfect stretch, the Dolphins would only have about a 35% chance to get in. Think about that. You deliver 8 straight wins and still barely have a 1-in-3 shot. That's how steep this climb is. Let me ask you this. Drop your prediction in the comments. How many wins do you think Miami finishes with? They're sitting on 4 right now. They've got a couple of winnable matchups ahead. Do they get to 6, 7, maybe even 10? I'm curious what you think because the playoff math is no joke. Now, when you break down Miami's schedule and the overall AFC landscape, there's one thing that stands out. Buffalo's recent loss to Houston didn't help Miami at all. The only scenario where that loss could matter is if the Bills completely collapse and miss the playoffs entirely. But if Buffalo sneaks in, which is still very possible, Miami actually needed them to beat Houston. Why? Because the Texans are right in the fight for those final wildcard spots. So yeah, Buffalo didn't do Miami any favors. And honestly, watching them fall apart against a backup quarterback on the road, tough look for a team that entered the season expecting to dominate. But let's talk about what actually matters this week, the rooting guide. Here's what Miami needs, ranked by how much each result impacts their playoff odds. 1. The Colts need to beat the Chiefs. Kansas City is sitting at 5-5, just ahead of Miami. A Chiefs loss drops them to 5-6, putting them shoulder to shoulder with the Dolphins heading into the final stretch. That single result bumps Miami's playoff chances from 35% to over 40%. 2. The Cardinals need to upset the Jaguars. Is it likely? No. Jacksonville's defense is legit, even when their offense sputters. But if Arizona finds a way, Miami's path gets noticeably brighter. 3. The Steelers need to lose. Miami faces Pittsburgh later this season. If the Dolphins win that matchup, owning the tiebreaker becomes massive. So yes, root against the Steelers every single week. 4. The Ravens need to keep winning. Miami already lost to Baltimore, so they won't own that tiebreaker. The best-case scenario is Baltimore taking the AFC North while Pittsburgh and Cleveland stack up losses behind them. If all of these results fall Miami's way, their playoff odds jump from 35% to around 50% if they finish 10-7. A coin flip. A fighting chance. From almost nothing to maybe, just maybe, there's life left in this season. And if you're still holding on to hope, don't worry. We'll keep breaking down this wild playoff picture every week, along with a fresh rooting guide for every Dolphins fan still dreaming big. At the end of the day, there's one simple truth about the rest of Miami's season. If the Dolphins want even the faintest chance at the playoffs, they have to win every single game from here on out. And Dolphins fans, your rooting guide is straightforward. Cheer for Miami and root hard against the Jaguars, Chiefs, Steelers, and Texans. Week after week. It's unrealistic to expect all of that to fall into place, but that's the formula. That's the path. That's the hope. Now let's take a closer look at the teams Miami is competing with. We'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs. Their remaining schedule is far from easy. They've got tough matchups scattered everywhere. Colts, Cowboys, Broncos, Chargers, Texans, and then a Week 18 showdown with the Raiders. It's a rough road for a team that, honestly, has looked nothing like the Kansas City powerhouse we've known for years. Be honest with yourself. Has there been a single week this season where you watched the Chiefs and thought, yeah, that's a Super Bowl team? Probably not. The only reason they still command respect is because their core, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce, has delivered championships before. But this year, strip away the past. Look only at the present. Kansas City looks average, beatable, human. At 5-5, the Chiefs are stuck in the middle of the AFC, and with 7 tough games left, it's not crazy to think they finish the stretch at 4-3. That would put them at 9-8 on the season, far from dominant. If Miami handles their business, they could absolutely leapfrog the Chiefs in the standings. So if the Dolphins finish 10-7, I'm not worried about Kansas City. Not this season. Not with the way they've been playing. Next, we'll dive into Jacksonville's remaining schedule and how their performance shapes Miami's playoff hopes. And as always, we'll be here every step of the way breaking down the Dolphins' journey, the playoff picture, and every piece of hope this team has left as we move deeper into the NFL season. Now let's shift the focus to the team that might be Miami's biggest obstacle, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their remaining schedule is significantly easier than Kansas City's, and that's a tough break for Miami. Jacksonville gets the Cardinals, the Jets, and the Titans twice. Those are games they absolutely should win, even if they aren't playing great football. And that's the problem. The Jaguars already have 6 wins. If they simply take care of business in those 4 favorable matchups, they get to 10-7 without even needing an upset. That means Miami wouldn't just need to win out. They'd also need the tiebreakers to fall perfectly. Conference record, common opponents, strength of victory, all of it. And honestly, it's hard to see a scenario where Jacksonville doesn't reach 10 wins. They're not a powerhouse, but the schedule does them every favor possible. For the Dolphins, the Jaguars are the mountain blocking the path. But they're not the only one. Let's talk about the Houston Texans. Their schedule is the complete opposite, an absolute grind. They've got the Colts twice, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Cardinals, and the Raiders. The only true should-win game they have left is Vegas. Everything else is a fight. If C.J. Stroud returns healthy, expected around Week 13, the Texans are still good enough to steal some wins. But with that schedule, a 3-3 finish is realistic. And 3-3 puts them at 9-8. A record Miami could pass if they run the table. And don't forget, Miami needs the Colts to still be playing for something in Week 18. And by the looks of the AFC race at the top, they will be. Teams like New England, Denver, and Indianapolis are fighting for that number 1 seed. Crucial because only one team gets the bye. So Indy should still be motivated when they face Houston to close out the year, which definitely helps Miami's chances. Now, you've heard me mention the Steelers. But honestly, they're not a major concern if the Dolphins win out. Miami plays Pittsburgh head-to-head. Win that game, and you own the tiebreaker. And Pittsburgh's remaining slate is brutal. They've got the Ravens twice, plus the Bills and the Lions. Even if the Steelers split those 4 tough games and finish at 10-7, Miami would hold the tiebreaker with a head-to-head victory. So mathematically, Pittsburgh is one of the easier teams for Miami to leapfrog. The real hurdles are Jacksonville, and then everyone else. So after going through everything in today's show, do I think the Dolphins can make the playoffs? Honestly, no. I just don't see them winning out and finishing 10-7. But if Miami somehow pulls off 6 straight wins after the bye and does get to 10-7, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world for them to sneak into the playoffs. A few of those other wildcard contenders have tough schedules, and it's very possible they drop some games along the way. Still, the hardest part is simple. You have to win your matchup every single week. One game at a time. We'll see if Miami can actually do that.